Welcome to Survivor Scale, the show where we break down all of horror's greatest characters to find out who has the skills, experience, and mentality to be the ultimate survivor. I'm H2 Mass, and today I'm breaking down every main character in Tom Holland's 1988 Cherubic Treachery Child's Play, where a little kid gets a doll possessed by a serial killer and must scramble to survive as his new toy commits vicious crimes and tries to take over his body. We start the film with Detective Mike Norris chasing serial killer Charles Lee Ray, a man known by many as the Strangler, letting you know he likes to get his hands dirty. As Charles continues running away, Mike demonstrates his pistol potency and shoots him in the leg, and as Charles limps towards a supposed getaway vehicle, a police car approaches and Charles' partner in crime drives away without him. With nowhere else to go, Charles breaks into a toy store to get the jump on Mike, but when he tries to shoot him, Mike once again shows off his accuracy as he hits Charles in the abdomen. Now bleeding to death, Charles collapses to the floor, but smiles when he sees some dolls beside him because he finally gets a chance to show off his immaculate French. As he chants these spells, dark clouds cover the ceiling and lightning strikes right in the middle of the store, destroying the windows and much of the foundation, but somehow leaving Mike unscathed. As Mike stumbles through the rubble, he comes across Charles' dead body and then moves on with his day, naively thinking he somehow killed the main villain of the film. No way you think he's actually dead. There's still over an hour left. We then meet Andy Barclay, the birthday kid with the perfect recipe for a heart attack before hitting puberty. I mean, look at all that sugar. He even burnt the toast. When he brings this calamity of calories to his mother Karen, she politely tells him that she'll eat it later, showing high manipulation by lying to her only child. To show she's actually a good mother though, she tells Andy happy birthday, but demonstrates poor memory when she doesn't seem to know his actual age.
How many years old are you today? 2?
You can't really be asking, right? Karen then tells Andy that he can open his birthday presents, but Andy, hoping he might get the exciting new good guy doll, experiences betrayal for the first time when the big box in his living room turns out to just have some boring old clothes. Every child's biggest fear. At work, Karen's friend Maggie tells her that a strange man is selling the doll that Andy wants, but at a much lower price than what she would pay at the store. So Karen buys the doll from the man with bad manners and goes back to work. Unfortunately though, the James Bond villain that Karen calls her boss commands her to work overtime on her son's birthday and won't take no for an answer. So Maggie showcases her kindness and offers to watch Andy while Karen continues working. While on a short break before her next shift, Karen gives Andy the doll and the two pint-sized play pals take a moment to greet each other.
Hi, I'm Andy. What's your name? Hi, I'm Chucky, and I'm your friend to the end.
Very poor choice of words. At night, Andy plays with Chucky in front of the TV until Maggie tells him to brush his teeth and get ready for bed. After she turns off the TV and takes Chucky to Andy's room, Maggie goes into the kitchen, but when she looks back, she finds Chucky sitting in front of the TV, with it now turned on again. Thinking Andy put Chucky there, she takes Chucky back into Andy's room and sends Andy to bed, not believing him when he tells her that he didn't put Chucky in front of the TV. Later, Maggie hears footsteps in the apartment and thinks Andy has gotten out of bed. As she looks around for him, she gets hit in the head by a hammer with so much force that she stumbles backwards 8 feet, voluntarily jumps through a window, and plummets to her death. That was one strong-ass hammer. When Karen gets back home, she finds Detective Mike investigating the scene, who discovers little footprints on the counter and believes Andy must have had something to do with Maggie's death, especially after Andy shows him the bottom of his shoes, which seem to match the footprints on the counter. Karen, however, shows her protective instincts and tells the cops to leave her apartment before they push this idea of Andy as the killer any further. Before Mike leaves though, Andy shows a level of deductive ability that's pretty ridiculous for a person who just celebrated his 2nd birthday when he checks the bottom of Chucky's shoes after pondering why Mike asked to see Andy's shoes earlier. Realizing it was actually Chucky who got on the counter, Andy rushes to tell Mike his theory, but both he and Karen brush him aside and don't take him seriously. Later that night, Andy tries to convince Karen that Chucky is alive, but she refuses to believe him, telling him that Chucky is just a doll. Andy though, once again showing his unrivaled stats for a toddler, recognizes his mother's desperation to believe her son isn't crazy and that what he's saying makes no sense. So to give her some peace of mind, he tells her that he just made the whole thing up.
I'm sorry. I'll stop making up stories.
I have never in my life seen a 24-month-old with so much emotional awareness. This kid is a psychiatric prodigy. The next day, Karen takes Andy to school, but when she leaves, he showcases some deception by sneaking out and getting on the train before walking to a seemingly abandoned house. When Andy leaves him to go pee, Chucky runs inside and turns on the gas stove, waking up Eddie Caputo, his partner who left him to die at the beginning of the film. As Eddie searches the rooms for an intruder, he displays poor awareness when he bursts into the kitchen and immediately fires his gun, igniting the gas and blowing himself up. A bit later, the cops apprehend Andy, who tries to tell them that Chucky committed these crimes and even begs Chucky to start talking to prove that he is alive, but Chucky simply stays inanimate like a doll, so Andy demonstrates his melee ability and punches Chucky in the liver. With Chucky still not reacting, nobody believes Andy's accusations, so the cops make Andy stay at the police station and Karen takes Chucky back home. Showing some mild openness to the supernatural, Karen talks to Chucky in hopes that Andy is actually telling the truth about what's been happening recently, but through her desperation, she ends up getting pretty worked up in the process.
Say something, damn it!
Since Chucky only answers with programmed responses, Karen leaves him alone, but when she goes into the kitchen and moves the box he came in, she realizes that his batteries haven't been used. Showcasing some deduction, she grabs Chucky to check his back and discovers that he's been talking this entire time without a power source, after which Chucky flips his head and talks again, so Karen screams and drops him on the floor. Regaining her composure, she picks him up and tells him to speak, but he just sits there like a doll, so she lights a match and gives Chucky an ultimatum.
I said talk to me, damn it, or else I'm gonna throw you in the fire!
So he finally reacts and fights back, biting her arm and then running out of the building before Karen can catch him. Later, Karen shows poor self-awareness when she tells Mike what just happened with Chucky, that a doll came to life and then ran out of her apartment, with her only evidence being the batteries that Chucky never had. When Mike shows no openness to her supernatural claims, she unveils her trump card, a bite on her arm, claiming that Chucky bit her. However, when Mike still doesn't believe her, Karen gets in a taxi to talk to the man who sold her the doll to find out where Chucky might have gone. After arriving in the shady part of town, Karen talks to the mischievous man, but instead of telling her where he got the doll, he tries to get a piece of her. Luckily though, Mike arrives and intimidates the man into telling him that he got Chucky from the store where Mike killed Charles Lee Ray. When Mike takes Karen back home, she reveals even more openness and deduction by recognizing that Charles Lee Ray has somehow placed himself into a doll, but despite how animated Karen becomes as she tries to convince Mike of her recent revelation, he doesn't seem to believe her. Until he goes to the police station to re-examine Charles Lee Ray's criminal profile. Ha! Seems like it had an effect. Unfortunately though, as Mike drives to Charles Lee Ray's house, Chucky attacks him from behind, allowing Mike to showcase his resourcefulness by grabbing the cigarette lighter and burning Chucky's face. As Chucky tries to stab him to the seat, Mike manages to evade his attacks while driving with the brakes that have been sabotaged, until he crashes and flips over. Chucky then starts running around the car, dodging all of Mike's gunshots until one finally gets him in the chest and forces him to run away. A bit later, Karen goes to Charles Lee Ray's house, but displaying some pettiness, Mike decides to play a prank by creepily walking up in the dark and scaring her from behind.
Karen.
He then tells her that they need to find John Bishop, otherwise known as Dr. Death, a man who knew Chucky in prison and told him about voodoo magic. After getting shot, Chucky visits John to learn how to stop becoming human and once again place his soul into someone else's body. John, though, refuses to help him, so Chucky takes John's voodoo doll that he has for some reason and starts bending it, which in turn breaks John's limbs as well, lowering his resolve until he tells Chucky that the only way to stop the process is to transfer his soul into the first person to find out that he is a living doll. After learning the secret, Chucky realizes that he'll need to become Andy, saying it in a way that sounds especially bad without context.
I have a date with a 6-year-old boy.
Wait, he's 6? But his mother said that he was 2. Maybe she's not as good of a mother as I thought. But that does make a lot more sense. Chucky then stabs the voodoo doll and goes after Andy. Karen and Mike arrive a few minutes later and find John on the brink of death, with just enough time to tell them that they need to stop Chucky by destroying his heart before he can transfer his soul into Andy. Meanwhile, Chucky sneaks inside the psychiatric hospital where Andy has been taken, and when he gets into his room, he drops the keys for some convenient reason and climbs on top of the bed to stab Andy. Luckily though, Andy demonstrates some ingenuity when he reveals he faked his body on the bed, allowing him to hide and run out of the room. Andy then goes back to his house, where he hides in the closet and grabs a bat to protect himself until Chucky cosplays as Santa Claus and sneaks in through the chimney. When Chucky jumps out, Andy hits a home run and gets away, but Chucky eventually finds him and knocks him unconscious. As Chucky teaches Andy some French, Karen and Mike break in and knock him away, but Mike shows poor awareness and lets Chucky stab him in the leg. Then, in a cool twist from the usual selfishness of horror characters, Mike gives Karen one of his spare guns so she can protect herself as he goes elsewhere to look for Chucky. Unfortunately, Mike shows poor melee ability when Chucky sneaks up on him, hits him in the stomach, and then knocks him out. When he goes for the killing blow, however, Mike's selflessness pays off and Karen shoots Chucky in the chest. Sadly though, her gun jams and she runs away as Chucky chases after her. Clumsily, she hits the table and falls to the floor, allowing Chucky to cosplay as a vampire and bite her on the neck. Showing some resolve, she manages to knock him into the fireplace, and as she struggles to keep him inside, Andy comes over and lights a match. In his greatest moment of desperation, Chucky begs for his life, but Andy shows some ruthlessness with the coldest line any 2 to 6-year-old has ever said.
We're friends to the end, remember?
This is the end, friend.
Just when they think they've won though, the burned up remains of Chucky continue attacking them, stabbing through the door to kill Karen, who for some reason decides to keep her head in range of the knife despite the strikes getting closer and closer. Luckily for her though, he leaves before realizing he could have easily killed her and tries to get into the room from a different entrance. As Karen runs away, Chucky gets in her line of sight, but Karen somehow has gotten a different gun that hasn't jammed and shoots off Chucky's limbs, seemingly killing him, only for him to get back up once again and forcing Mike to shoot him in the heart. After all that he survived, they need to drop him in acid just to make sure that he's dead. But anyway, let's ring. Starting off with the world's most clever 2-year-old, or one of the most clever 6-year-olds, Andy showcases an unprecedented level of ingenuity and deduction for his age, and even when compared to all contestants, he still performs very well, often exceeding those who should do much better than him, leaving the tenacious toddler with a terrifying toy in A tier. Moving on to the parent of the prodigy, Karen doesn't do anything exceptionally well, but she does have several solid qualities and doesn't really perform terribly in any particular area, with her openness to the supernatural and deductive ability doing just enough to place the gun-grabbing guardian in B tier. Finally, we have Detective Mike, who shows strength in mid-range combat and deduction, but somehow ends up losing to a doll in a hand-to-hand fight, a pretty sad outcome even if he got caught off guard. These failings, in addition to his relatively average openness to the supernatural, place the pissed-off policeman in B tier. But that's it. The average ranking for this cast was B tier. A pretty solid collection of characters. As the beginning of one of horror's most notable franchises, Child's Play still holds up pretty well, even with such a ridiculous premise, showcasing an entertaining antagonist, impressive practical effects, and the most competent 2-year-old the genre has to offer. Thanks for watching.